homewood. She was in reality Alanna of Pirate Swoop, the daughter and granddaughter of Tortall's spy masters, raised from the cradle to compete in the world of international espionage. During the previous summer, she had acted as chief bodyguard to the Balitang children. With the arrival of spring and the move to Rajmuat, Ali knew she would become the rebellion's spy master. Although the Balitang's former housekeeper, Kedanga, has remained in Rajmuat to collect information from long-standing networks of spies, Ali's specially recruited spies and those they will train have their own unique work ahead. They will collect information for the rebel leaders to use against their enemies and conduct whatever actions of sabotage and psychological operations required to put the Raka's enemies at odds with each other. For 16 years she studied such work under her father's eye. Now she would do it herself for the promise of better leadership for the Isles. In preparation, Ali used the winter to build a cadre of trained spies, people among the household who could learn and use all she had to teach. The lessons of these Raka and part Raka in their 20s and 30s included written and spoken codes and code breaking, lock-picking, and climbing. She also taught them sign language, thorough searches, medicines and herbs, and the detection of other spies. Because she was younger than many of her trainees, Ali treated them in a teasing, grandmotherly way, while they awarded her the Raka nickname of Duani, or Boss Lady. Ali also spent time with the Raka mage Ochobu, creating suicide spells and magic detection charms, and with the rebels' armorer, choosing weapons for her pack and for herself. Ali dared not tell anyone why she was so eager to take up the mantle of spy master. To do so, she would have to reveal her true parentage. The Raka would see her as a tool of the Tortallan crown, while the forces loyal to the Ritavan king and his regents would see her as a spy. Only one being knew her true history: the deposed god of the Copper Isles, the trickster, Kiprioth. It was he who had brought Ali to the service of the rebellion that would return him to his seat of power. Although responsible for her presence, Kiprioth did not speak to Ali throughout the long winter. She assumed he was hiding from the god-brother and goddess-sister who had cast him from his isles, Mithros and the great mother goddess. Luckily, Ali had the crow fighter Nawat to entertain and delight her through the long months. His courtship grew more passionate throughout the winter, and he finally stopped offering her bugs to eat. At the beginning of April, most of the household traveled south to ready the family's home in the capital, Rajmuat. The family and the remainder of the servants, including Ali, took the following few weeks to prepare for the move that would change all of their lives completely and irrevocably. Chapter 1. Rajmuat. April 23rd, 463 H.E., Rajmuat Harbor, Copper Isles. As the ship Gwenna glided through the entrance of Rajmuat Harbor, a young woman of 17 years leaned against the bow rail, taking in her surroundings through green hazel eyes. Despite her white skin, she was dressed like a native Raka in sarong, sash, and wrapped jacket. The sarong displayed her neat, if thin, figure, one with the curves that drew male eyes. The calf-length garment also showed muscled legs and trim ankles protected by leather slippers. Her jacket, worn against the chill of the spring air, covered her muscular upper arms, while the loose areas of her clothes hid an assortment of flat knives designed for her needs. She had a small, delicate nose, inherited from her mother, just as her eyes were her father's. The wide mouth, its lower lip fuller than the upper, was all hers, with smiles tucked into the corners. Her reddish-gold hair was cut just below her earlobes to fit her head like a helmet. Ali looked the soul of repose as she lounged against the rail, but her eyes were busy. She swiftly took in the panorama of Rajmuat as the city came into view. It sprawled over half of the C-shaped harbor, arranged on the rising banks like offerings laid on green steps. Steam rose from the greenery as the early morning sun heated damp jungle earth. Patches of white and rose-pink stucco marked newer houses, while the older houses, built of wood and stone, sported roofs that were sharply peaked and sloping, like the wings of some strange sitting bird. The higher the ground, the more complex the roof, with lesser roofs sprouting beneath the main one. The roofs of the wealthier houses blazed with gilt paint in the sun. Strewn among the homes were the domed, gilded towers of Rajmuat's temples. Above them all stood the main palace of the Kipran rulers, its walls, 20 feet thick, patrolled by alert guardsmen day and night, gleamed like alabaster. The rulers of the Isles were not well liked. They required the protection of strong walls. In the air over the great harbor, winged creatures wheeled and soared, light glancing off their metal-feathered wings. Ali shaded her eyes to look at them. These were storm wings, harbingers of war and slaughter, creatures with steel feathers and claws whose torsos and heads were made of flesh. They lived on human pain and fear. In the Copper Isles, ruled by the heavy-handed Ritovans and their Luaran nobles, the storm wings were assured of daily meals. Ali hummed to herself. There had been plenty of storm wings when she and the Balitongs had sailed north a year before. Now there were a great many more. From the news she had gathered on their voyage to Rajmuat, she wasn't surprised. The regents, Prince Rubinyan and Princess Imogen, had spent the winter rains executing anyone who might give them trouble in the name of their 4-year-old king. Ali nodded in silent approval. It was so useful when the people in charge helped her plans along. The storm wings reminded her that she was not on deck to sightsee. Ali turned her head to the left. Here a fortress guarded the southern side of the harbor entrance. Beyond it, on a short stone pier, stood the posts called examples. Each harbor had them, public display areas where those who had vexed the government were executed and left on display. In Rajmuat, the capital of the Isles, the examples were reserved for the nobility. They were surrounded on land by a stone wall broken by a single gate. Over the gate a banner flapped on the dawn breeze. A rearing bat-winged horse of metallic copper cloth posed on a white field with a copper border, the flag of the Ritovan kings of the Copper Isles. Guards streamed through the gate and onto the pier. At the foot of one of the posts men were arguing, waving their arms and pointing. They wore the red-painted armor of the King's Watch, the force charged with keeping the peace, enforcing the law, and conducting executions. Ali narrowed her eyes to sharpen her magical sight. The power was her heritage from both parents, and allowed her to read the lips of the men and take note of their insignia. She identified 4 lieutenants, 1 captain, and a number of men-at-arms who did their best to pretend they were invisible. Someone sniffed behind her. "Carrion crows," Lady Sarai Balitong remarked scornfully. "What, are they fighting over who gets the honor of displaying the next wretch? Or just over who does the mopping?" Sarai moved up to stand beside Ali at the rail, her brown eyes blazing with dislike as she watched the men. A year older and an inch taller than Ali, Sarai had creamy gold skin and tumbles of braided and curled black hair under a sheer black veil. An excellent horsewoman, she held herself proudly straight, catching the eye of anyone who saw her. "They seem to be missing something." 13-year-old Dovasari Balitong moved in to stand on Ali's free side and pointed. Where the example pier joined the mainland stood a large wooden sign painted stark white. On that sign were 3 names and the words, "Executed for treason against the crown, decreed by His Highness Prince Rubinyan Jimogen and Her Highness Princess Imogen Ritovan Jimogen, in the name of His Gracious Majesty King Donivan Ritovan." The date was that of the previous day. "What happened to their poor bodies?" whispered Sarai, brown eyes wide. "They should be here for weeks." "Perhaps Stormwings dropped down and carried them off," Dove suggested quietly. Ali's mistress was different from her beautiful older sister, shorter and small-boned. She had the self-contained air of someone much older. She had a cat-like face and observant black eyes. Like Sarai, her skin was creamy gold, her hair black, and her lips full. She also wore a black gown and veil, in mourning for the father who had been killed 6 months before. Ali knew exactly what had happened to the dead, because she had created a plan for anyone executed and displayed here. The absence of dead examples was her declaration, as the rebellion's spy master, that she would turn the Ritovan crown and its supporters inside out. The spies she had sent ahead with Ulasim 3 weeks before the family's departure had been charged with putting her declaration into action.